Modern fitness has split the human body into two categories that it treats as completely separate. You are either building strength or you are building endurance. You are either in a bulking phase or a cutting phase. You are either feeding your muscles or you are burning your fat. The fitness industry built an entire ecosystem of products, programs, and conflicting advice around this idea. And most people who have spent years following it can tell you the same thing. They got reasonably good at one or the other, but never genuinely both at once. The Vikings didn't make this distinction, because their bodies didn't. A Viking oarsman in 900 AD could row for 8 continuous hours across open water, step off the longship, carry his weapons and shield across rough terrain, and fight. The same man who could lift stones that modern strongmen treat as competition weights had endurance that modern athletes train specifically for and still cannot fully replicate. He was not a strength athlete who also happened to have endurance. He was both, completely, in a body that was lean and functional and built for sustained performance in any condition. And the reason both were possible at the same time, the reason the Viking physique was something the modern fitness model cannot produce no matter how well you follow the program, comes down to a single hormone. The Vikings produced this hormone at levels modern bodybuilders spend thousands of pounds trying to replicate artificially. The supplement industry will never tell you how to raise it naturally because the method is completely free. They raised it every single day, without knowing its name, without understanding the mechanism, and without doing anything that looked like training for it. The answer is in how they ate. More precisely, it is in how long they did not eat. If you want to understand how a culture with no gyms, no protein powder, and no sports science built the most physically complete bodies in Northern European history, subscribe and stay with me. What the Vikings discovered by accident is something decades of modern research have since confirmed. The science is extraordinary. The Vikings didn't design their eating pattern for performance. They didn't time their meals around training windows or calculate their fasting protocols. They ate the way they ate because their environment, their working day, and their resources made anything else impractical. Every morning, roughly 1 hour after waking, they ate the dagmal, the day meal. Leftover stew reheated from the night before, dense dark bread made from rye or barley, skyer if it was available. Skyer is worth noting specifically. A fermented dairy product native to Scandinavia that contains around 11 grams of protein per 100 grams, which is higher than Greek yogurt and higher than most dairy products available today. The Vikings didn't know about protein content. They just knew it kept them full and functional through the demands of the day. Then, they worked. Think farming, fishing, shipbuilding, rowing, even training for combat. They did hours of sustained physical labor in Scandinavian weather that demanded constant output from the body. They ate nothing until the day's work was finished. The nattmal, the night meal, came in the evening. This consisted of meat stew, fish, vegetables, and bread. It was the main meal of the day, eaten communally after everything that needed doing had been done. Between the end of the nattmal and the dagmal the following morning, there were roughly 16 to 18 hours without food. Every single day. This was not a wellness strategy or a performance protocol. For them, it was just life. Modern science now has a precise term for what this eating pattern creates: intermittent fasting. Specifically, the 16 to 18 hour fasting window that current research identifies as the threshold at which the body begins triggering its most powerful physiological responses. And the Vikings, they hit this window every single day for their entire lives. But here is the thing. The fasting window alone is not the secret. The secret is what happens inside the body during those 18 hours, and specifically what it does to the one hormone capable of simultaneously building muscle, burning fat, and improving endurance capacity. No supplement replicates it. No training protocol produces it as reliably. And the Vikings were flooding their bodies with it every morning before they even picked up an oar. In 1988, a team of researchers at the University of Virginia published a study in the Journal of Clinical Investigation that should have permanently changed the way the fitness industry talked about fasting and muscle. It did not, partly because it contradicted too much of what the supplement industry was selling at the time. But the data has never been disputed. It has only been confirmed, repeatedly, by subsequent research over the following 3 decades. The study measured growth hormone secretion in healthy men over 24 hours, first on a normal fed day, then during a fast. What they found was not a modest improvement, it was a transformation. During fasting, growth hormone pulse frequency, the number of times the body released the hormone in bursts over 24 hours, more than doubled. Pulse amplitude, the size of each release, also doubled. A 1992 follow-up study by Hartman and colleagues, measuring the same mechanisms with greater precision, found that 2 days of fasting produced a 5-fold increase in total 24-hour growth hormone production, 5 times more from the same body through the mechanism of not eating. Here is why this matters at a practical level. Growth. Hormone is the only anabolic hormone in the human body that simultaneously does 3 things. It builds and preserves lean muscle mass. It specifically targets stored fat, not subcutaneous fat under the skin, but visceral fat, the metabolically active fat surrounding the organs, and mobilizes it for fuel. It also improves the efficiency of the mitochondria, the energy-producing structures inside every muscle cell, which is the physiological foundation of endurance capacity. Most hormones do one of these things. Growth hormone does all 3 at once. The Vikings, through an eating pattern dictated entirely by the demands of their working day, were producing it at levels that modern pharmaceutical companies charge thousands to replicate through injection. They did not know any of this. They just felt strong. They just felt capable of sustained effort in ways that fed men sometimes were not. Across generations, they noticed that eating twice and working hard produced a body that functioned extraordinarily well. Now here is the part that should make the modern fitness model genuinely uncomfortable. The fitness industry's division of strength and endurance into separate categories is not based on biology. It is based on convenience. It is easier to sell a strength program and a separate endurance program than to explain that both qualities come from the same underlying physiological adaptation, and that the adaptation requires neither. The Viking body did not separate them, because at the cellular level they are not separate. Growth hormone, produced in abundance during the 18-hour fasting window the Vikings maintained daily, does something specific to muscle tissue that the modern distinction between strength training and cardio completely misses. It increases the density and efficiency of mitochondria within muscle fibers, meaning the same muscle that generates force can also sustain that force for longer without fatigue. More mitochondria means more aerobic capacity. More aerobic capacity means better recovery between explosive efforts. Better recovery between explosive efforts means more total output over time. This is precisely what rowing across the North Sea demanded. Not a single quality. Both qualities simultaneously from the same tissue. Research published in PubMed Central in 2020 and confirmed by a Nature Communications study in 2024 found that short-term fasting does not negatively impact endurance performance and may specifically improve fat oxidation during sustained effort. The body's ability to switch between burning glucose for explosive power and burning fat for sustained endurance, what researchers call metabolic flexibility, is directly enhanced by the fasting window. The Vikings were metabolically flexible, not by design but by default. Their eating pattern built it automatically. A fed athlete on a modern plan fueling every 3 hours never builds this flexibility. The body never learns to access stored fat efficiently, because stored fat is never the only option. It is always waiting for the next meal. The Viking body had no such option. It learned, out of necessity, to run on whatever was available. And what was available was almost always its own stored energy, delivered cleanly, efficiently, over sustained hours of demanding physical work. That is the paradox resolved. They were strong and had endurance for the same reason. The fasting window, the growth hormone, the metabolic flexibility that both produced. Not two qualities from two different training methods. One quality, physical completeness, from one accidental daily habit. But none of this tells you what to actually do with it. You don't need to row across the North Sea. The biology doesn't require it. What it requires is the fasting window, the 16 to 18 hours between your last meal and your first. Not as a dramatic intervention or an aggressive protocol, but as a default. The way the Vikings defaulted to it because their day demanded it and their environment enforced it. In practical terms, finish your evening meal and don't eat again until 1 hour after waking the following morning. That is the dagmal and nattmal structure, applied directly to a modern day, without any further modification. If your evening meal ends at 8, your first meal the following morning comes around 8 or 9. The window opens. The growth hormone response begins within the first few hours and continues building through the night. What you eat in those 2 meals matters, but less than the timing. The Vikings ate dense, real food: meat, fish, fermented dairy, rye bread, vegetables. High protein, high fat, low in refined sugar. No snacking, no constant grazing. 2 meals that were substantial enough to fuel genuine physical output across the hours between them. The training that sits inside this window doesn't need to be complicated. The Vikings didn't split upper and lower body days or periodize their strength work across training blocks. They did hard things: rowing, carrying, wrestling, lifting heavy objects. Compound movements that demanded the whole body, sustained over time, against real resistance. The growth hormone their fasting produced protected the muscle. The training gave it a reason to exist. The combination produced something the modern gym model, for all its complexity, has rarely managed to replicate. The Viking physique wasn't built through 2 separate pursuits. It was built through one life lived in a specific rhythm. Work hard, eat well, fast long, sleep, and repeat. The body responds to that rhythm the same way it always has, the same way it responded in 900 AD on a longship crossing the North Sea, the same way the science confirmed in 1988, and the same way it will respond for you, starting this week, if you give it the conditions it was built to run on. If this is the knowledge you come here for, subscribe. There is far more where this came from, and most of it has been sitting in plain sight for over 1,000 years.